please stand and pledge allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Say that faster.
We have rules and academics. Mr. Ryder. Oh, and then Dawn's going to play.
Okay, we're going to have an update on cyber school with Dawn, please.
Just briefly, we met with VLN last week. The contract has been executed, and we are looking at January 28th as the opening day of Easton Area School District Cyber School, which is also the name that we are recommending. January 8th and January 16th, we will hold information sessions at the Easton Area High School Library starting at 6:30. Also, Mr. First is preparing a website that should be together by the end of the week with more information for parents. That's it.
Any questions? January 28th? Excellent.
Yep, start of the new semester.
Go ahead.
Almost called you Dr.
It's called a field promotion.
Just one more time so everybody can hear the name of the school again.
Easton Area School District Cyber School. EAST Cyber School.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any public comments? Yes, sir.
If you are done with the public, I do have a question for the academic committee. And that is, several months ago, we had a very strong desire to institute a change in our graduation requirements for this district from the high school to include 4 units of science and 4 units of mathematics. If I recall, the administration was to have prepared and answered and told us when we can begin and how it's going to happen. I have not heard word one. Have you, Mr. Ryder?
No, I have not.
I do remember Mr. Cuck saying that we had to have the decision in place by January, if I recall, because of course selections and all. So why have we not heard anything from the responsible administrators? I hope it wasn't due to confusion over what we wanted.
Is there anyone here that can answer that question? I mean, this would be the time that people could answer the board members.
Mr. Cup, would you be prepared to address that?
I'd have to defer that to Dr. McGinley or Mr. First or someone from central administration for some direction. I'm not prepared. Obviously, it's not listed in the document, nor was I asked to present. So that'd be my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would think that based on our discussion of the, I'll use core, and using 4 years of each academic core, meaning history, English, math, and science, that I think in discussion we had talked about the incoming freshmen as possibly then being the select group that would then, as, quote, seniors, pick up their 4th year. My feeling is it would not be the next incoming freshman class, it would be this freshman class. That would give, obviously, the next 2 years to prepare for those, because obviously they will be in 10th grade and scheduling probably in January. So that would give us basically a little over 2 years to prepare for that, and I think that's a direction the board should just go. I think that gives us plenty of time to do those things internally, from an administrative standpoint, and it would be nice to see that administrative standpoint take the lead in this and run with it, and basically get up to where I think our kids need to be with the 4th year of math and the 4th year of science. Yes, Carrie?
Yeah, my question would be, why has not there been any discussion? So I would like to hear from an administrator. Mr. Cluck doesn't know for sure, so perhaps Dr. McGinley might be able to share where you've gone with your direction with your administrators.
Steve First, Mr. First and I have met in regards, and also Dr. Roberts. Although Dr. Roberts did resign, obviously she is not part of this process at this time, but she was going to be an integral part of the process since she was the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction.
But things come
Absolutely, and we have gone on as a result. There has been a clear consensus from this board and from our administration that the rigor and relevance needs to be part of our graduation requirements. And it has been quite clear that the 4 years will be implemented. It has been discussed that it needs to be in a tiered system, that, as Mr. Ryder just spoke. And it was my understanding that the information would be disseminated to the board in a presentation so that everyone would have a clear understanding exactly what it would look like, when it would take place, and if there was any, obviously, discussion from the board, but the departmental aspect of the high school was also being, part of that process. So it wasn't done just from a central administration insight. It was done in the high school with departmental conversations to make sure that everyone can be part of that process and make sure we do what's best for our students.
So up to this point, we've had no conversation.
It has been clearly directed that that will be incorporated, that the rigor and the relevance, the 4-year requirement that has been asked of by the board and the administration will be in a tiered system that we can move forward.
Then I guess to speed this process up, we would ask Mr. First then to speak to the board in a presentation as of January, and I think in January, then as a board, we can look to approve it at our, 1, the committee meeting for his discussion, and 2, at the board meeting for our approval.
I agree.
I mean, is there any formal or long-term processes that you need? That we have to do something with the state to file, that we're making the changes?
Well, we would apprise them of what our graduation requirements are, because when you change your graduation requirements, you do need to
Yes, you will.
apprise the state of such requirements. I certainly do not anticipate the state having any difficulties with providing more rigor, and I don't anticipate anyone else having any concern about that. I would think that would be something that everyone would want, but that would be part of the process, yes.
Thank you, Dr. McGinley and Mr. Ryder.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no chair summary, really. Nothing's moving on.
Summary?
Which goes over to policy with Carrie, which,
The agenda
is the naming.
You ready?
There's a vote there. It's on the agenda for tonight. The naming of the cyber school.
oh, but that's not here.
I think there is another element that on the agenda for our board meeting, there will be a motion to accept the cyber school naming of Easton Area School District Cyber School. So if the board would be amenable to that, that would be the only other addition to this.
I assume that's the name that shows up on all the official documents and everything then? And all the publicity that'll go out and all the advertising?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. And, when we thought about the name, we wanted to make sure that it was clearly delineated, that it was easily accessible, and that's why we chose our school district and then added the cyber school.
else, that concludes that. Policy we're going under, and
Are you ready now?
I think so.
Okay, excellent. We're moving forward on policy. The policy committee is with our one and only presenter, Bob
Yeah.
Bignell, is going to present about the preliminary discussion of naming our district property.
This is something that's come up multiple times. We've had questions about naming and everything, and I've talked to various people, and I wanted to understand parameters. So I'm more asking some questions and looking for reaction this evening and everything, or at least some acknowledgement. Then we'll take that and we'll start to translate that into a policy to develop that we can actually put out there. This also comes into play as far as we start going down the line and looking at the foundation, because this way, as different things come up or people want to do things through the foundation, it may be giving money to the foundation, saying, I want to name this room, and I want, and whether it be for English, math, music, whatever, that obviously that monies may come in, and it's naming a science room, and at the same time, it's the money's for the purpose of buying some kind of a piece of science equipment or something that may be beneficial. So things that I've started to hear and want to believe is there should be areas in certain buildings or all the buildings that are per se reserved, that are off limits as far as naming. Some things like auditoriums. Obviously, we talk about like Cottingham Stadium. Cottingham Stadium itself may be off the name, but you can have, as I joked with some people, the Charmin bathrooms, or you may do something with the fields or whatever else. But looking that there should be certain pieces as we would put a policy together that are exclusive, auditoriums, gymnasiums. And now that opens a different ballgame, because you also come into, and the second piece of this is, you come into private people that want to do naming versus, as I mentioned, like a Charmin or some other types that may want to name something as a basketball court or whatever else. And so that is my first stopping point, to talk about those issues of reserved areas, naming, commercial, private, and looking to hear if there's any thoughts, or if everybody's saying, yeah, that sounds right, it should all be included. This can't be a silent group.
Any thoughts from any of the members of the board?
What's the purpose? Is the purpose to raise monies? Is the purpose to honor people? What would be the primary mission?
Some of it, if it's a public company, it could be for the purpose of advertising. Obviously, Charmin's getting their name on something that's appropriate, that type of thing. In some cases, it could be to honor people. So different things. Bottom line is, in all cases, it brings money into the district or through the foundation.
Or services, perhaps, instead of money, in-kind services, if a company wanted to donate a piece of equipment, for example?
There you go.
Is that possible?
Sure. Let's say they want to bring in, and I've seen this done too, where they want to have their plaques or acknowledgements on because they bring in some kind of workout equipment or something. They donate $10,000 of workout equipment, and they want some kind of acknowledgement on that. There's all sorts of various things like that, but obviously there's some kind of monetary translation or whatever.
I think one thing I would mention is that I do like the whole limitation piece on what should be up for grabs, so to speak, for the naming purposes. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to see 200 classrooms in a building, each with, individual names rather than their numbers. I mean, looking at auditoriums, cafeterias, maybe even hallways, but not so much every single space in the building.
They do name classrooms, but they don't change the numbering scheme, though. That's one thing. You can't, from a scheduling point of view and everything else, you have to keep that. But sometimes they'll put in, it could be so-and-so's English classroom because they taught in there X amount of years or something, and somebody feels compelled to do that. But I hear that. Yes, Frank?
Mr. President, when you talk about advertising, I can see that in certain areas. When we talk about the auditorium, we wouldn't really sell name of the auditorium for advertising, would we? Would we do it like as a year, every year we change the name of the auditorium?
It was suggested that we keep things like the auditorium and that off the list of things that could be named.
So we decided that we're not going to do that at all?
I'm asking. This is an ask at this point in time, because based on what I hear, we want to start to draw up some language, and then we'll actually come back with something that we can read. But there's no sense in writing it this way to change it that way. Let's hear what some of the thinking is. I will start to take you down that one, Frank. What I started to write also is, when we look at the naming, we establish a cost. You know, and a little bit different than where you were, Baron, there. But let's say a cost on a classroom is $10,000. And this is just a number out there right now. Don't, you know. And I think we'll use some stuff as an example, and then we'll play with it. $10,000 for naming a classroom. That gets your name put on it for, let's say, 7 years. Again, just grabbing stuff out of the air. That gets it for 7 years. If you have continued contributions, okay, and we'll talk about dollar amounts, that can extend the life of how long that name lasts on there. So it's an ongoing type of thing. If you decide, hey, I just wanted to take a quick shot and leave on something, that'd be the end of it. So that's some of the thinking, Frank, with the name. So if you say about the auditorium, and let's say we come up with a $40,000 or $50,000 fee on an auditorium, right? Okay, $50,000 gets you X amount of years. Continuing contributions will keep it there, but if there's no continuing contributions, different story. I think a grid has to be made up of the various rooms, obviously the dollar figure, and the name and the length and term, and what the contribution is for the purpose of continuing. So
Would this be in lieu of the foundation, in part of the foundation?
either way, because the foundation, when they're out there and somebody says, look, I want to give you X amount of dollars and everything towards something, and I would like to see my name put on it. Let's say we set up that something's going to be $10,000, right? $20,000. And the company's willing to come through for 25 because that's what some cost or everything associated may be worth. Fine, they come through with 25, that, it falls right in line with the naming.
So then I have a person I would like to honor who maybe is an outstanding teacher, who maybe has passed, or maybe in later years, where I really don't want to rob his retirement, his or her retirement, but I'd like to honor them with a plaque, maybe in a chemistry area, a science area, an English area, or something like that. But wait a second, I've got to come up with $500 for a plaque, $750 for a plaque, $5,000 for a plaque. I think if you're going to have a foundation, you have a foundation. If somebody wants to come out and be Banco and give us a turf field and use it for advertising, I think we'd probably go to the board and accept that.
Right.
There's a gentleman in Bangor, it's obviously not, it's Bangor Memorial Park, I believe, but it's Paul Farnan Field. And deservingly so. I don't think he paid anything to have that on the field. That is an honor to that gentleman. And in knowing that gentleman from football, that is a tremendous honor for him. And I would not want to take that away from people who don't have the dollars and cents to, have that room or have that block of seats or whatever. Just a comment.
But then how do you draw the line?
Good tell. That's why we'd continue to discuss this.
Yeah.
Well, and in that case, I think that was the borough that did that naming, because that's not the school district field, it's the borough field.
Still, you're honoring a gentleman who's in education and is also a leader in the athletic world.
Yes.
I think philosophically, if you say that the classrooms are up for naming, I don't know why you would restrict the auditorium or any other space if the price was right.
I appreciate and applaud the aggressiveness to generate revenue, but do any other high schools sell classrooms? Do we really see somebody giving us $10,000 to name our classroom? I'm asking, I don't know. Classrooms? I've seen weight rooms, auditoriums, gyms, field houses. I've never seen a classroom.
You don't see much in classrooms, I absolutely agree with you. You do see almost all the other rooms.
Science labs sometimes.
Yeah.
I think if you go down to Northampton Community College and you walk
Yeah.
down the halls, there's certain
Oh,
rooms
yeah,
that are,
community college, but I mean like high schools.
well, I think that's the concept they're trying to,
No, I understand. Yeah, it's a good idea, but I mean, are we dealing in reality when we talk about people giving us $10,000 to name a classroom at the high school?
You never know, Frank, when
You-
it's open and advertised.
Yeah, and you have to make it available, because if the foundation's out there talking with people and everything, and the opportunity presents itself, you can't say, well, now let's go back to the board and see where's the policy going to be. You have to try to get these things in place ahead of time so people know what they're talking about. And that's what this is all about. You know, we have had people that have come forward and said they want some naming done. Now, I'll throw a whole nother curve in here, because, and back to what Mr. Ryder was talking about, depending how you want to recognize people, and I've seen recognition done in other ways too, where you talk about the plaques. And this is something not necessarily via the board, but can be via the administration, where you can put plaques in schools and honor, and then this is just a concept I threw out and I mentioned to somebody or a couple, you know, you're going to honor a teacher, a retiring teacher this year. You have 5 retiring. The teachers have to decide which one is really the outstanding retiring teacher. And for that year, you know, they may get a picture up outside the admin building, a little plaque, and then next year their picture goes away and the new picture goes up and their little plaque goes on a big board that says in 19 this one was recognized, in 2000 this one was recognized, so on and so forth, as an outstanding teacher. That is something that can be done administratively and not necessarily through board action or anything. But the board action in this case that I'm looking at is, where are we on naming? Because we keep running into this question. And as I said, as the foundation, and you've heard different things, as they become active, this could become a reality where there are people that want to recognize, or, you know, like they said, a science lab or something, or donate science. You see it with workout equipment. I just saw a lot of workout equipment, not at a college, but even in a school, where there were different workout machines per se given, and they all have the name tag on, donated by or presented by and everything. And that's all it was. It was just a tag on it that said it was presented by, not naming of the room or anything else. And people/companies both have done that. You want to see what I can write up? Is that the challenge?
It's always easier for a group to edit rather than create.
Well, I'm hearing some things here, and I think we can use that. And I'll go back, and as I said, I think this is going to be a work in process type of thing, but I think it's something that we have to keep working on. You know, we may even have a bus driver that decides they want to name the bus after themselves as it goes down the street, right?
You already suggested that.
Just thinking.
Be called the candy bus.
Let's not go there. So, okay, let me go back and I'll start to write, but as we understand, it's only a work in process, it's nothing else. So, thank you, Carrie.
Suggestion is that as you work on this writing process, that you take into account costs that would come into play and where the costs would come from. Because as our district is fighting our budget battle,
Yep.
you know, we don't have an enormous amount of money to donate to plaques and the such, so.
The cost comes out of the naming fee, whether the foundation does it and the money's coming through there, that cost has to come out of the money that is collected for that naming and everything.
Yeah, and that's my point. I mean, you're talking about 2 different types of naming with donations and naming just to recognize. So while you're doing your
Like the equipment.
creation,
Yeah,
take those things into account.
okay.
So that we can feel the financial burden.
Okay.
That would be great. Okay, any comments from the public? No? Okay, so in summary,
Now I have a question.
oh,
Can we get an update on, I believe it's policy 913 with our community involvement and flyers? I think we've been sitting on that for,
well, we were waiting for Mr. Freund to come back when he's completed his case in Pocono Mountain, and I have not heard from Mr. Freund, so I'm
Well,
waiting.
there's been no decision yet.
Okay.
So there was
That's
an
what I'm-
argument a couple of months ago, and I think the advice was, might as well wait for the decision so that you can have an informed policy. It hasn't come back yet.
But so I assumed, not hearing from you, that we have not
Now,
progressed.
the second there's a decision, we'll certainly
Okay.
let you know so you can address that.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Then
we have no idea of a timeline, do we, when we're dealing with that legal process, excuse me?
Well, the life appointments, Bill. So,
Well,
no,
I
so-
have a four-year appointment. I would really like to see this get taken care of prior to that, because I think we're probably going on a year and a half, maybe 2 years, Mr. Pinnabone, do you think, on this? And
We're
I'd
working
really
on 2
like
years.
to
well, we're
get to a
close.
point where maybe we just bring it to a vote
We're
and roll the
close.
dice.
We're close to the end, though. The argument before the Third Circuit was about 2 months ago, so it really could be tomorrow, could be the next 4 or 6 weeks.
Okay.
But honestly, I think they'll issue it when they issue it, but I wouldn't expect to be too much more delay.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate
I
it.
think that we need to move forward on that as soon as you can, so that we can clarify it for the community.
Yes.
Because that's the big issue.
Okay, question. Mr. Freund said 4 to 6 weeks, I think.
It's just, it's,
I mean, you're just guessing, I understand.
it's a guess. It could be there tomorrow.
Right.
But
I mean, can we-
typically, the opinions in the Third Circuit are, 2, 3, 4 months, maybe at the most.
We've been to. Is there any way policy, such as Mr. Ryder suggested, we just put it out there? Can we give ourselves a deadline? We're going to wait this until this month, whether there's a decision or not. We're going to bring it before a committee and push it to board for a vote.
Frank, I could go 4 to 6 at this point in time.
Well, no, I'm fine
Weeks.
with that, but
Weeks, not
do we
months.
say like in 7 weeks, regardless whether there's a
Well-
decision or not, we make a vote?
Well, you make
Sure.
a change in your policy, and then if he comes back with something that occurred in the court, then we change it again. So at this point, we have a policy in place. We're operating under that policy, and I believe that there are some circumstances that there are certain organizations that
Suffering.
we work, well, some are suffering, but I think that
No,
some
they're
are still
suffering.
working with the district.
But there's some that are suffering. But I
Yeah.
think that, in my opinion, just from watching the conversations, I think no matter what the outcome comes from Pocono Mountain, I don't think it's going to change too many votes from what I've heard. I think people are ready to vote. I think we're just going through the motions and waiting for the decision. But I think, we give it 7 weeks. Whatever happens, we make a vote. Because I think we've put the community in these groups on pause, and not so much just the groups, but the people who benefit the most are the children that utilize these groups. And we've put them on pause now before we came on, 2 years. So I think it's time we make a decision.
Well, we put them on pause because the issue is really informed outside of our room here. So I would say if that's the argument that we should make a decision, we should have done it 2 months ago.
I agree. I pushed for it 2 months ago. But I
I
think.
say wait.
So every time something happens in another district, we have to stop our policy and put everything on hold?
Again, the state of Pennsylvania is who we're serving here.
But I mean, we had this policy in place until something happened at Pocono Mountain. This has been in place for how many years?
There is a policy in place, as Mrs. Ellison said, is there not?
But no.
There is a policy, then there was an interpretation of that policy based on what was asked of our solicitor, what would be appropriate or not. I believe the administrators were supposed to have a meeting with one organization in this community in the fall, and I don't know if they ended up having that meeting or not. I think it was with you, Dr. McGinley. Do you recall that?
Mr. First had that meeting.
So you weren't in attendance?
I was not.
I could be wrong, Ms. Ellison. I'm under the impression that we were handing out and disseminating information. When this happened, it was stopped until further notice, until the decision came from Pocono Mountain. Now it's 2 years later, and we still don't have a decision. So,
Yeah, yeah,
I
they-
know we can't speed up the
Right.
court process, but I mean, we stopped what we were doing, waiting for this. Why can't we continue what we were doing, lift that freeze off, if you will, and then if we have to make a decision later, we can. But right now, 2 years, the community's been in limbo while we're waiting.
Well, because, and you're right in saying that, Frank, because I mean, basically, that policy doesn't say that community members can't
Right.
put flyers through the school district.
Right.
It states such that you can. So, yeah, there is a freeze on it based on legal recommendation or legal comments or whatever, in the past. So as we move forward, I mean, that's a choice of the board. I mean, I certainly am more in line to be concerned with the community being able to be in partnership with the district, and that we should be encouraging that, and that this is a discouragement of that. So,
So can we look at 7 weeks, we put it on the agenda, whether there's a decision or not? I mean, it might fail, but it might not. Can we have a vote? And we've been discussing this for, since I've been, before me.
well,
since
it
I've
was
been here.
before you,
Right,
yeah.
so a year since me, I'd like to just at least take a vote on it.
Yeah.
But I can wait the 4 to 6 weeks, but I mean, let's set a deadline when we're gonna vote.
It's like the March timeframe.
March is a good month, a month of spring, rebirth.
Month of budget, month of rebirth. New money. Okay, so do we want to move forward and set a date right now? How do I,
Do you want to just put it on the March committee meeting?
okay,
And then after that, we can determine to schedule it for the board meeting.
okay, that sounds good.
Thank you.
And if that Pocono Mountain thing is resolved prior to that, then
It'll
we'll
move
act on it
forward.
prior.
Go prior.
Sooner. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so in summary, Mr. Fainall is going to come forward with his creation and present it to the board for dissection. And we will look for March to speak on the policy regarding community input into the district through flyers and information. Was that 9:13, right? Okay, sounds perfect.
Get the dissection.
All right, so I conclude this committee, and we will move forward to finance.
Oh, we got a couple items on here tonight, interesting. The first one's Dr. McGinley on the sequestration resolution. I think everybody had a copy of that.
I just wanted to ask that I feel that our district needs to advocate for continued federal resources. Thus, our allocations that encompass our title programs and our IDEA funding. And the IDEA funding is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. This federal funding is imperative for the Easton Area School District. I ask that the school board please consider adopting a resolution regarding the sequestration.
Questions on that?
This will be part of the agenda for our school board meeting or our next meeting.
It's on the agenda for this evening.
Yes.
Do you see this as like a ceremonial act? I mean, I can't believe it's anything substantial.
I know that last year, this is federal, but last year with the state allocations, one of the things that we advocated was to make sure that we had our PA Pact, which was our accountability block grant. And all voices through superintendents going to meetings certainly did have an impact. At this level, it has been suggested, since it has not been rectified, and since it will be obviously according to January when the vote will come, that I feel that it's just doing our due diligence to advocate on behalf of this, since it's such a large.
Right, I forgot the wording, but would we then fax this to our state senators, our representative?
Yes, yes.
Good.
And I will also put it on our website, and I will meet with the union and see if they can also, obviously, disseminate this information, as it affects all districts in the state of Pennsylvania, not just Easton.
Right, I understand.
And I will also forward our resolution to our IU so that other superintendents can use this if they choose to.
Actually, a person it should go to particularly is our congressional representative.
Yes.
Other questions? Moving on, Mr. Cock. And just, I think preempting him just slightly, my understanding is we're seeing this presentation tonight, but there is still discussion going on with the attorneys, and so we don't have the final agreement yet.
What's this
Not
about?
the final agreement, there's
What's this,
The bond rewards.
Oh, yeah, they're, let me just say that, I think that we're very close on that. There are a couple of boilerplate indemnities that, I never recommend, so we'll see whether we can convince them to take them out.
So we'll see the presentation tonight. If everything's worked out, we will then turn around and have this on a future meeting to approve the agreement and everything, and that would get it in place. Mr. Cock.
Good evening. I'm here to present on Bond Rewards for Education. Bond Rewards for Education is an exciting opportunity for the Easton Area High School and the community to partner to raise funds. Some of you are familiar, just a little bit of background, are familiar with reward points for various entities, including Giant. You have your shopper's card. You sign up with Giant, percentage of those costs then come back to the school district. Our PTSA actually has been doing this for the last year and a half. Last year they bought in probably around $1,800 to $2,000 simply by customers claiming that they are members, or not claiming, but signing up for a program. And a percentage of that comes back to the school, much like box tops for education or Campbell soup labels back in my day, if you remember those things. Cut out the Campbell soup labels, bring them in, the school gets reimbursed, so on and so forth. But Bond Rewards is sponsored by a company called Lee Altameda. It's a marketing company, and there's a percentage of those costs that are picked up by Lee Altameda. But the important part is it's basically three parts to Bond Rewards. Bond Rewards itself will be listed as Easton Area High School Bond Rewards. It will not be necessarily Bond Rewards for Education, but it is our website. And there's three parts to that website. There's online shopping rewards. There's over 600 partners, Home Depot, Lowe's, Macy's, for example. These folks partner through Bond Rewards, and a percentage of everything that the shopper that's registered or a member of spends comes back to not only the shopper, but also comes back to the school. There is no cost at all to the school for the program. However, later on I'll describe to some of the requirements on our behalf in terms of picking up some odds and ends, nothing financially. There is also a section that deals with school deals. So many of you probably receive email information regarding coming out to Chick-fil-A to support the Instrumental Music Association. You may receive pancake breakfasts at Applebee's. These are our various clubs and activities throughout the school that are constantly competing for our shared dollars in the community to help run our organizations and clubs. This, although isn't necessarily an advertisement for that fundraising, it's an opportunity for the fundraiser to get marketing using the Easton Area High School Bond Rewards site. It's also an opportunity for them to take care of some of these things so that people can use credit cards, and those administrative costs are then consumed by the Bond Rewards site. The other component is simply donations. There are people out there willing to donate, not necessarily on a large scale, like you were talking about earlier with the trust. This is something that is much smaller in terms of the band students are going to Florida and they need to raise money, and they're selling as much fruit as possible, but there's only so much fruit that the band can sell. Are there people out there that were previously been willing to make a donation for the band to fund a trip to Florida, to Disneyland, potentially the presidential inauguration, whatever those sort of things that pop up, and there's an opportunity to utilize this site for that. So that's exactly what the next three sides basically explain. Online shopping rewards, which is simply you putting in your email, setting up a membership account, and every dollar that you spend, a percentage of that comes back to Easton Area High School, and a percentage of it comes back to you as the shopper. You then have that opportunity as the shopper to either use those Bond Rewards points for yourself or donate those Bond Rewards points back to the school district or the Easton Area High School Bond Rewards site. The second, as I mentioned, was the school-on-school deals. What was described to me as opportunities tends to be gift certificates. So if there's a deal this week on selling gift certificates for, let's say, TGI Fridays, the Intermentional Music Association, if you don't mind me using that example again, has the ability to use this site to say we're selling $50 gift certificates for $40, and a percentage of that will come back to the IMA. It's a marketing opportunity for that particular group. The last one, as I mentioned to you, was online donations. So what they handle for the school is administrative and accounting functions, thank you notes, and also tax-deductible receipts.
So it makes it easier for someone to simply go on here with a credit card, donate $20 to IMA for the Disneyland trip, and then the administrative costs, thank you notes, and tax deductible receipts are taken care of by Bond Rewards. The other strong component here is, or the community component here, is the ability then to then post onto this website what's referred to as the High School Video Network. If you go on, Allen has recently started this structure. They are not up and running for a lot of their rewards programs in terms of monetary donations, but they do have a lot of their activities from their school posted on this particular site. It gives us the ability to put clips of their football games, pep rallies, information out to parents, because the idea is the more folks that we bring to the website for everyday usage, the more opportunities for those people to remind themselves to buy their goods using Macy's and do their online shopping. So it is another marketing tool for the district. How it works: the school kicks off, we have a huge membership drive. We have, let's say, 1,000 community stakeholders involved in the membership drive. They sign up, they get a welcome email, and they begin to shop. A percentage of that will then come back to the school. All of this information is tracked by Bond Rewards, and quarterly, the school will be cut a check from Bond Rewards for our percentage. There's referring of people here. There's also the ability to redeem your points, so you can either give it to the school or you can use it as a shopper. There are various promotions that take place during the year, and all of that continues to encourage folks to use this particular program. What does the Altamira do? What does the school need to do in order to, work out this contract? And as Mr. Freund said, there are some contract language that's well beyond my understanding that he's working on right now with the company, and they're more than willing to make those particular adjustments based upon the needs of the school. Ongoing support. There's a co-branded website. I think that's important. It's not Bond Rewards. It's Eastern Area High School Bond Rewards. It's co-branded with that particular company. The email campaign is there. The email campaign is for people who sign up to be members. It's not like Lealta Media jumps in on our email chain and we send that out. It's those people, we direct them to the site. There's a link on our website for the Eastern Area High School Rewards Program. Once people get there and sign up, then they get these email campaigns. They provide all of the marketing tools, whether it be flyers, posters. In addition to that, training materials to operate the website, and those things that need to be done on the accounting side, so to speak. There are some minimal tasks that need to be completed, and we have somewhat of a plan, will be more finalized in the high school in order to take care of those items. So then what is our responsibility? We need to provide support. We need to conduct bi-monthly membership drives. We have a kickoff, announcements out to community, our end, because Bond Rewards on the other side has their other customers, and those are your Macy's and your Home Depots and your Staples and those items that participate. And the idea is the more people that use this site, the better off everybody's going to be in the end. In addition to that, ongoing enthusiasm, encouragement, and creativity. I talked to Mr. Seminetta and Mr. First last week regarding the issues. And what I said was, making sure that we have the various stakeholders within the high school community as a part of the discussion to get them involved, not just necessarily the administration and those working for the school and school district. Everybody wins. As I mentioned before, participants earn 3% cash back. The school gets 2% of that shopping. There's potential revenue listed there. With 1,000 families, I gave you that example before, spending roughly $150 a month or $1,800 a year. With a 2%, you're looking at $36,000 for the school. Spending $300 per month with that same particular group of individuals, the average retail cash payout at 2% for the district is $72,000. This is potential. Right now, Bond Rewards is in California, Texas, and starting here in Pennsylvania. So right now, Bond Rewards is currently in discussion with Allen High School, Deer High School, Liberty and Freedom, and ourselves, and several schools down in Bucks County. Allen High School is the first one actually to set up the site, so you can actually go onto the Allen site and take a look at what Allen High School Rewards looks like. How the money is shared. Your families, meaning those people who sign up to are members, your school, the online donations, there's the pie chart there as well, showing that 1% comes back. So here's the interesting part. Mr. Ryder likes to spend quite a bit of money at Home Depot and fixing the house, painting things, correct? Or your honey-do
It's
list
Lowe's,
done?
but
Is it?
yes.
Okay. In his retirement, you have those things to take care of at home. But what Mr. Ryder spends at Home Depot, 2% comes back to the school when he signs up. He'll be the first member. Those online, and then he wants to donate those. That percentage cost that he wants to donate, 1% comes back to him. So he's actually rewarded monetarily through reward points for donating to the school, which is a nice feature that he's able to do. The other thing is he can donate those back, and then there's a 0% cost. So if Mr. Ryder accumulates, let's say, $1,500 in points or something to that extent, he can donate that back, and 100% of that goes to the school. There are no costs whatsoever administratively for that money to come back, in addition to being able to donate online. The percentage there for local deals, it's 2%, go back to the families. However, on the local deals, it's 15%. So it's a higher percentage of that money that comes back, and that agreement then is made with that local establishment. Some of these folks could be in the Bond Rewards program, some of them may not be. So you can use Expedia as like one of those places that you can use for certain events. So even people traveling. One of the examples I gave Mr. Simonette and Mr. First, which is rather interesting, is we currently use Home Depot and Lowe's to buy equipment and supplies for, let's say, construction and manufacturing. Once we have that account set up, every time we purchase supplies from there, we're actually getting a percentage back, a 2% back that we're going to be put back into our structure. So that's a nice example, of how Bond Rewards works and can work to our advantage, assuming that all stakeholders are, thoroughly involved in the process. Kate Clark is available. She lives down in the Bucks area. So I wasn't going to have her drive up for a 10 or 15-minute presentation. She is available by phone for comment or phone call or questions if I cannot answer them. And she's also available for anything afterwards in terms of answering. She's very knowledgeable on the subject. But one of the schools, this school is not in Pennsylvania, but just to give you an example, this is their site. It's Dublin High School Rewards. Ours would simply say Easton Area High School Rewards. It would be my school. The ability for them to donate. These are example of the shopping online items. You simply go and shop. Now, what you can also notice is that some of the percentages are actually higher than 2%. And so some of those rewards that come back in terms of shopper dollars, it's an encouragement for them to use the site. So you might one day log onto the site and see that Ace Hardware is really trying to pull you in because Lowe's is 3% and 4% is going to Home Depot, and Ace says if I'm going to entice these people, I'm looking at 5%. And so that will come back to the person purchasing, but then that person also has the ability to say, I'm going to give that back to the school. And then, of course, the school's always getting their 2%. So in speaking with Kate, I think this is relatively new to the area. Bond Rewards as a program is not new. The high school rewards component is relatively new for the company, and they're trying to branch out and spread. So we'd be blazing some new paths, so to speak, particularly in the area. But like I said, Alan is on board, and I think Mr. Bailey at Liberty is going to be up and running very shortly as well. Questions from the board? Mr. Pinnable.
Mr. Cook, the $36,000 per year, $72,000 per year, what account does that go to?
That account would be a high school account. Through our activities, we have accounts for International Instrumental Music Association. We have accounts for Key Club. All of our activity accounts are out at the high school. There would be an account set up for Bond Rewards at the high school.
And they would go to those activities?
They would go to those activities if they're on for individual sale, but the other account would go to the high school, and then we would set up how those funds would be spent or dispersed throughout the clubs and activities in the school. So that's kind of the open part. That isn't, the Alta Media and Bond Rewards doesn't tell you that particular component. There's several ways we can address that, but one of the things is to get together a committee to talk about the stakeholders involved, particularly our PTSA. about how those funds would be distributed. Typically, what some schools would do, and what my impression would be right off the bat, Mr. Pinnabone, is to have a process by which people request to be assisted through bonds reward dollars. Off the bat, we got to figure out how we're going to get the system up and running and start to accumulate those funds before we can think about potential spending of them. But that's right now preliminary what we're looking at.
And now I saw here, one of the pages back, they also provide the accounting, correct? Of
Right.
this.
Well, what they'll do is, all of that stuff is internet-based, all the accounting will be there, and we simply get cut a check on a quarterly basis as a school. So really, our accounting procedures is a quarterly check or individual fundraiser check that will go to the bond rewards account and be deposited into our account at the high school, our activity account.
And Mr. Simonetta, as his position, would have full view of that, know what's coming in, what's there?
He currently has access to all of our activity accounts at the high school.
Yeah, and it will also, just to clarify, it will also fall under the umbrella of the audit with the activity fund at the end of each year, and the auditors that will be part of it as well.
It's a very careful process when the auditor comes in and looks at all the activity counts, what the revenues are going, where are coming in, and what the expenditures are. He even looks through individual receipts and things of that nature, make sure that what we're spending matches that particular account. And that would be then reviewed at that point in time as well.
Last question I have.
Sure.
And this is to Mr. Freund.
Sure.
Mr. Freund, do you happen to have any idea of how long your office would need to present us with the language?
Well, we already did. I mean, essentially what we have, Mr. Pettibone, is they have a boilerplate contract, and I routinely bringing to the attention of the business office these boilerplate indemnities, which are very detrimental to the district. They're often signed as a because these are so-called adhesion contracts. In other words, you get a big company, they're boilerplate. I don't know whether they'll change them, but I think it's my job to bring it to the district's attention. There's also a couple things in there that are legally problematic. For example, the state, the application laws in California, by law, political subdivisions, of which we are in effect one in Pennsylvania, has to be decided under Pennsylvania law with a Pennsylvania jurisdiction. Things like that, things we see all the time. So they'll change some of those, and maybe they'll have some problems with others, and so I've already indicated those to
Just
Mr.
tell you, this
Senator.
came up in the presentation by Mr. Cook last week in our office. Sent the contract out to Mr. Freund for review. A couple of questions came up. This came on the agenda, pending board attorney review. So he has a couple of questions,
Yeah.
and,
If the board wanted to pass it, is there, it's going to be on the agenda tonight?
No.
It is.
well, it's on now.
Oh,
I
it
mean,
is.
I wouldn't have any difficulty if you wanted to pass it, subject to solicitor satisfaction with language.
I
What we'll do
have an
is-
issue with that, because I think there's a lot of times that we don't take the time to read what we're passing, and we run into trouble. And so this thing, as I said to Mike earlier, should not be on the agenda, and at the same time, we should get it, have a chance to read it, and then do it the next month.
That's fine, too.
Thank you, Mr. Fainall. I also find this a case of misplaced priorities, that we have administrators working on a fundraising scheme, and we just talked earlier at the Academics Committee of a lack of action and a lack of traction on the graduation requirements. Totally misplaced priorities.
Dr. Skies, I would agree that the academic piece, we should have information about that. But I think, Mr. Cup, looking at the financial piece and the academic piece, I think they kind of go hand in hand. Without the money, we're not able to educate. So I'm not disagreeing that the other thing, the academic piece, we should have had that already. But I think, what Mr. Cup is doing is good. It's a way to generate revenue that we'd be able to take from the budget next year.
I think that the fact that the
Principal's looking, I mean, it's nice that Mr. Cook's doing that, and I think that we all appreciate the fact that he's put some time into it. However, I would agree with Dr. Moskaitis, there is a concern. There are huge, and we have a lot going on at that high school. We have a whole new scheduling process, a whole new type of curriculum presentation. We have all these
Does the board
issues.
have any question about bond rewards?
Excuse me.
Does the board have any
No, but
questions
I'm
about bond
spe-
rewards? I
well-
just want to have a seat. Does the board have any questions about bond rewards?
If I can just finish my comment, and then you can sit
Go
down.
ahead.
I think it's important that our principals of our schools are paying attention to the academics, and that someone else within the district has the wherewithal and the knowledge base to work on these types of fundraising efforts. I think it's, I agree with Dr. Moscaitis 100%.
Okay. Comments were made, but I do think we ought to go back to, Mike was making the presentation on the program itself, and respectfully ask, though, that if we have questions on this, I think we have a different debate going on here. Do we have any other questions right now for Mike? Then he can go, and like he said, have a seat on this one.
One question. Have you been in communication with any of the other principals about their experiences with this program and their moving forward with this process?
Right, some of it is right now, Mr. Vandenberg, preliminary, but
Okay.
I do plan on contacting Mr. Shannon, who is the principal at Allen High School, who has recently got the program off the ground.
Okay.
There are several principals in the same, as I mentioned before about Blazing Trails,
Mhm.
there are several principals in the area on the same track as what you're seeing here
Mhm.
tonight, doing a similar conversation with their business managers, doing similar conversations with their school board regarding this, facing similar economic situations and academic situations as Easton is, and felt it necessary to bring this to the attention of the board to review, because we are in this sort of economic crisis, and we're trying to support our kids in all areas.
Thank you.
Other questions from Mr. Cook? I will say something, the debate that was going on here is interesting, but at the same time, a principal multitasks. And I have recognized, and I think in being fair to Mr. Cook, I have recognized where principals in other districts, they have 6 and 8 different types of projects going on, from the academics and the scheduling, to the finance, to stuff that are going on with athletics, to sometimes dealing with bus and discipline types of issues as well, and many more things that they participate in. And I think we have to be fair that way. I think, if we saw or understood that he didn't, somebody doesn't understand the priority here, then that's a different thing we have to address. But all these things are important in keeping a high school moving, because they all involve the benefit of the students. And as I said, I'm not trying to defend or anything, I'm just saying that a lot of principals in a lot of buildings, okay, not just the high school, elementary alike and everything, with everything they deal with, they deal with a lot of stuff in a day, in a month, but they shouldn't lose sight of that number one is academics.
I think that was the point.
Okay.
I think that was the point that I was making, and I'm sure it was the point that Dr. Moscaitis is making, is that, we're looking for complete the things that are required. And then this stuff, again,
Yeah,
we can have a debate
yeah.
later on about
So,
this.
Okay, is there anything else under finance? Hearing none. Basically, bond rewards will be coming back. Sequestration is currently on the agenda for later this evening. And I have to ask if there's anybody in the public that wants to address the board. I'm not seeing any hands. We move on under the agenda here, under public to be heard on any items. And I'm saying any items because we didn't do just agenda items before. Any comments on any agenda items or non-agenda items? Hearing that, we'll adjourn this meeting.